Did you know that money was never really about trade? It was about control. In fact, over 90% of the earliest coins carried the image of a ruler, not the weight of the metal one we think of money. We usually picture it as a neutral tool, a simple invention to make trade easier. But the real story is much deeper. From the very beginning, money was designed as a symbol of authority. The first coins weren't just pieces of metal used in marketplaces. They were stamped with the faces of kings and emperors. This wasn't accidental. It was psychological. It told people every single day your survival, your bread, your shelter, all flow through the power of this ruler. Money unified populations, but not always for their benefit. It became a language of obedience, a constant reminder of who was in control. Think about it. If I can decide what you use to eat, trade, and live, then I don't just influence your choices. I shape your reality itself. This is the hidden truth. Money was never merely an exchange of value. It was the exchange of freedom for order. And the question that lingers is, are we still trading freedom for the illusion of stability today? When we move forward in history, we see something fascinating. Power no longer rested only in the hands of kings and emperors. It shifted quietly into the hands of bankers. Families like the Medici in Florence or the Rothschilds in Europe mastered something extraordinary. They realized that lending money to governments was far more powerful than wearing a crown. A king could rule a country, but a banker could decide whether that king won or lost a war. Think about that for a moment. Wars, revolutions, even the rise and fall of empires often hinged on who financed them. And these families weren't in the spotlight. They operated in the shadows, weaving invisible webs of influence. Their real power wasn't in the gold they held, but in the debt they created. Debt became a leash that even the most powerful leaders couldn't escape. This shift marked the birth of an unseen empire, one without borders, one that couldn't be conquered by armies because it lived in contracts, ledgers, and promises. And here's the profound truth. The moment power is no longer visible, it becomes even harder to resist. So the question is, who really rules the crown, or the hand that funds it? As history unfolded, one thing became clear: war was never just about territory or pride. It was about money. Armies don't march without food, weapons, and supplies, and all of that costs more than kings or generals could afford. That's where the machinery of debt came in. Behind every battlefield victory, there was a ledger. Behind every declaration of war, there was a loan agreement signed in a quiet room far away from the front lines. Debt became the most powerful weapon of all. It chained nations long after the battles were over. A war could end in months, but the debt it created might last for generations. The winners and losers on the battlefield often mattered less than the creditors who financed both sides. And in many cases, those creditors profited regardless of who won. This is the uncomfortable truth. Blood was spilled, not only for flags and borders, but for interest payments and financial gain. It shows us that war is not simply fought with swords or bullets. It's fought with signatures, promises, and the burden of repayment. So ask yourself this: if wars are fueled not by honor, but by debt, then who are the true victors when the smoke clears? In the modern age, power found a new disguise: the US dollar. After World War II, when nations were exhausted and rebuilding, the dollar emerged as the anchor of global trade. But its dominance wasn't a natural outcome. It was engineered. The secret was oil. In the 1970s, quiet agreements ensured that every barrel of oil, the lifeblood of modern civilization, would be priced in US dollars. That meant any nation that needed energy had no choice but to hold dollars. And when you control the currency that fuels the world, you don't just participate in global trade, you dictate it. This was the birth of the petrodollar system, a hidden empire more powerful than armies. Countries that challenged it often found themselves isolated, sanctioned, or destabilized. The dollar became more than paper. It became a weapon, a gatekeeper of global power. And here's the paradox: most people think empires rise and fall with armies, but the greatest empire of our time rose through contracts, oil wells, and printing presses. So the deeper question becomes, are nations truly sovereign, or are they still chained to the silent empire of the dollar? But every system of power comes with a cost, and the hidden cost of our modern financial order is staggering inequality. While nations and elites grow stronger, ordinary people often find themselves trapped in cycles they didn't choose. Inflation quietly eats away at savings. Central banks dictate interest rates that shape entire economies, and debt becomes a lifelong companion. From mortgages to student loans to national deficits that trickle down to taxpayers. What's most striking is how invisible this control is. Unlike a king demanding tribute, the system demands compliance without raising its voice. You don't see chains on your wrists, yet you feel them every time you struggle to pay bills or realize your hard work buys you less each year. It's a psychological game as much as an economic one, keeping populations just secure enough not to revolt, but never free enough to truly break away. And here lies the truth: money has shifted from being a tool of freedom to a mechanism of subtle control. So the question we must wrestle with is this: are we truly living in an age of prosperity, or in an age where prosperity itself has been carefully rationed? Every empire eventually faces cracks, and today we are watching them form in real time. The dominance of the dollar is being challenged as new alliances emerge. Nations are experimenting with trade outside the traditional system, and digital currencies are reshaping the way people think about money itself. Technology is breaking down barriers that once kept financial power in the hands of a few. But here's the catch: every revolution in money brings both liberation and risk. Cryptocurrencies promise freedom from centralized control, yet they also invite volatility and new forms of manipulation. Shifting alliances may weaken old powers, but they may simply replace them with new ones. The cycle continues. Power never disappears, it just changes form. The real question is not whether the system will evolve, it will. The question is whether ordinary people will stay passive or step into this shift with awareness and courage. Because at the end of the day, money is not just about currency. It's about choice, about who we allow to define the value of our lives. So I leave you with this: will you be shaped by the system, or will you rise to shape the future of it?